Luke, I am your father. You've heard that line a million times, right? Well, actually, he never said that. When you go back to the movie, Darth Vader says, "No, I am your father." If that's not how you remember it, trust me, you're not alone. Hey y'all, it's Simi, and today we're drawing conclusions about the Mandela Effect. This is my very first video, so I'm both excited and a little nervous. I've been waiting to talk about this stuff for over a year now, and honestly, I kept waiting until I felt ready. But the truth is, the best way to learn something is just to start, and so here we are. So grab your sketchbook, get comfy, and let's talk about one of the strangest mysteries out there, the Mandela Effect. The Wicked Witch sends her flying monkeys after Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, right? A lot of people remember her shouting, "Fly, my pretties, fly." But in the movie, she actually says, "Fly, fly, fly." And these are just a few of my favorite examples of something called the Mandela Effect, which is a phenomenon where large groups of people remember the same thing, but they remember it in the wrong way. You know, you see it all the time in pop culture. The spelling of the Berenstain Bears, which I remember it being spelt with an E when I was growing up, but evidently it's spelt with an A, Berenstain Bears. And people quote movies that don't even exist, whole memories that feel real, but they don't actually match the historical record. And the thing is, when enough people remember the same false moment at the same time, that's when all the crazy theories start to pop up. So some say it's just bad memory, and other people think that it points to something much stranger, like alternate timelines, overlapping realities, or little glitches in the matrix. And it's called the Mandela Effect because a large group of people remember Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 1980s. But in reality, he was released and went on to become South Africa's president and died years later in 2013. But so many people shared the same incorrect memory that it stood out, and that's what led to the term being coined, the Mandela Effect, in the first place. The Mandela Effect isn't just about misquoting movies. The more you look into it, the stranger it gets. Because sometimes it's not just one detail people get wrong, it's like a whole scene or whole scenes of a movie, entire logos, and shared memories that feel too specific to just be random mistakes. Take the Fruit of the Loom logo, for example. A lot of people remember a cornucopia behind the fruit, that little woven horn-shaped basket thing. But officially, it's never been there. Not once, not ever. Every version of the logo just has been the fruit. No cornucopia. That blows my mind. Then there's the spelling of Febreze. Some people clearly remember it spelled Febreeze, but it's always been Febreze. Febreze. Only one E, not two. And we can't forget about the Monopoly Man. No monocle. He doesn't have a monocle. I swear he has a monocle, okay? Even though so many of us remember him with one. So what's going on? This is crazy. Why do so many people share these same mistaken memories? Some psychologists say it's just how memory works. Our brains like patterns, and when something feels familiar, we fill in the blanks with whatever makes the most sense to us. Other times, we blend memories together without realizing it. But then there are people who believe it's more than just that. Like parallel timelines, reality glitches. And even if you don't buy into this idea fully, you have to admit it's interesting how so many of us get the same detail wrong in exactly the same way. But the Mandela Effect isn't the only example that we see patterns like this. There are other moments where a lot of people report similar experiences even when they're not connected to each other at all. For example, people who've had near-death experiences, they often describe almost the same exact thing. a tunnel, a bright light, a feeling of being pulled somewhere peaceful. They're all different ages, come from different backgrounds, from different parts of the world, but the description is the same. You see something similar with people that try mushrooms or have DMT trips. They talk about the geometric patterns, bright colors, and the sense of entering a space that feels strangely familiar. And then there are ancient symbols that show up across cultures that never interacted with each other, like eyes and spirals, suns, serpents. They're all recurring motifs that keep appearing throughout history. None of these things are the same as the Mandela Effect, but they raise a similar question. Why do so many people share such specific kinds of memories or visions? It could just be how the human mind is wired, or maybe certain images, ideas, or patterns are so universal that they show up again and again without anyone teaching us these things. But either way, it shows that our individual memories aren't always so isolated as we might think. And there's also this theory that you'll see floating around online a lot whenever people talk about the Mandela Effect. And that is the idea that all this weird stuff with the timeline started happening around the time that CERN fired up the Large Hadron Collider in 2012. Some people think that's the experiments happening there, especially the ones dealing with particles colliding at high speeds, might have influenced reality in a way that we really don't fully understand at this point. Not in a dramatic, we opened a portal way, just the idea that if you're studying the building blocks of the universe, it could create an effect that we're not able to measure just yet, or even understand that what's happening. Most scientists say that that's not the case, and that the collider doesn't even have the power to cause something like that to happen. But from my perspective, how do we know? A lot of the side effects of a lot of the drugs that are taken or popular now, like 15 years from now, they're gonna be like, yeah, this causes anal bleeding or something crazy like that. But the theories keep coming because of the timing, right? A lot of the people believe that the Mandela Effect became more noticeable around 2012, so they link the two. Whether the connection is real or just coincidence, it shows how people try to make sense of shared confusion. When enough people feel like something changed, they start looking for moments where it actually could have happened. And there's this other idea that gets mentioned a lot in conversations like this, and it comes from this experiment that involved rats in mazes. Back in the early 1900s, researchers taught a group of rats how to navigate a maze to get to food. There's nothing unusual about that, but what caught people's attention was what happened afterwards. Rats in completely different labs, even in other countries, started learning the same mazes faster, as if the knowledge was spreading in a way scientists couldn't explain. Years later, a biologist named Rupert Sheldrake used this example to talk about something he called morphic resonance. That's the idea that once a pattern is learned by a group, it becomes easier for others to learn it as well. Most scientists disagree with that interpretation and say there were probably other factors that were involved. But the idea stuck because it tries to explain why certain memories or patterns seem to show up across groups of people or animals who were never connected physically but shared these memories, right? So it doesn't prove anything about the Mandela Effect, but it's just another cool idea that does add to the bigger conversation about how our minds might be influenced in ways that we really don't fully understand. And when you start to put all these ideas together, The misquoted lines, the logo details, the shared visions, the theories, the experiments. It can start to feel like a lot. And honestly, that's what makes the Mandela Effect so interesting. Not because there's one clear explanation, but because everything's overlapping in a way that makes you think. Some of it is memory, some of it is pattern recognition, some of it is people comparing notes online and realizing that they all remember the same wrong, quote unquote, wrong detail. And some of it we just don't have a clear answer for yet. That doesn't mean reality shifted or that something dramatic happened behind the scenes. It just means our minds, individually and collectively, are way more complicated than we tend to give them credit for. Whether this comes down to psychology, shared cultural influences, or something we haven't figured out yet, the Mandela Effect is one of those topics that keeps pulling us, well, me, back in. And I'm sure I'll definitely be addressing this topic in future videos because I find it endlessly fascinating. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. I love having this little space where we can draw, relax, and explore these strange things that we all think about but never really get a chance to talk about. And so in the next episode, we're taking a closer look at the moon landing, the questions, the theories, and why it still sparks so much debate. So I hope you'll join us for that. But until then, stay curious, stay cozy, and keep drawing your own conclusions.